Hello, Yaroslav.
Hello,
it's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
And you haven't been here for a while. We want to bring you more often.
It's a nice venue. I actually, as soon as I found out that it's 8th floor of VCIT, it was like, oh yay, I remember that room. It's a good room. Good crowd too. Yeah.
Yeah, we sort of alternate between the downtown campus and the Burnaby campus.
I'm glad I fit in the downtown.
Good luck.
Circulation. Yeah.
It was your good luck. My name is Medhat. This is Yaroslav.
Yaroslav.
And could you say something about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a SharePoint MVP. I write SharePoint books. I do SharePoint consulting and kind of SharePoint related things. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Yeah.
Okay, and I have a bunch of SharePoint questions actually for you. So my first question is, how has SharePoint changed over the last couple of years?
So there's been, and we haven't rehearsed these questions.
I know.
So yeah, so I hope I'm not going to say something. Yes. So there's been a huge push to the cloud. A lot of small and medium businesses are now, like I get a lot of projects that are now in SharePoint Online and Office 365. And even larger organizations, even Canadian organizations are going to Office 365. So there's a huge push, obviously, from Microsoft to the cloud, and then there's a lot more consultants that are kind of embarking on that journey because there's a lot more consumers or customers that are willing to go to that. I would say that's about by far the biggest change, how it evolved. Another big change that I have to mention is the rapid release cycle, because it's all online. It's no longer 3-year wait. It's more kind of like 3 months, 6 months. I know Microsoft says every couple of weeks or months even, but it's more kind of like any major changes are every few months. So that's a huge change too.
I did a course, I think it was last summer, with Ted Patterson, an online course.
Yeah.
It was on SharePoint 2016.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit disappointed, not with Ted Patterson, he's an excellent guy, but I was disappointed because there wasn't much new that I could put my hands on between SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint 2016.
Right. You know what? It was. I think it's just the timing, because in May Microsoft released. Was it before May?
It was. I think it was in June.
Oh, it was
June
in
and July. Yeah.
So maybe the course was kind of like more of the same.
Yes, it was.
Because in May, Microsoft released the preview of a new development framework, and it's still in preview to this day. But it will come on Office. It obviously will. It's already available in Office 365, and it will come on premises on 2016. But there's a new development framework that's more around, not your typical apps any longer, but more around, Node.js and Angular. So the way you build and test apps changes completely. Someone was telling me that they, obviously, a geek, right, that they've built a web part on a plane without internet connection, because you can actually deploy and test it in an environment called Workbench, which is like offline environment. So there's a lot of cool, exciting stuff happening, but I think because the course was happening within a time frame that it wasn't publicly available.
Yes.
It's still not publicly available, but there's a lot more talk about it now. So I think you'll find it much more interesting how things evolved, because before it evolved from you having to run a thing on your machine, a huge server. I remember I had this big of a laptop, right? Asus huge laptop. And then to kind of a running machine in a cloud, to now not even have to have anything, not even be able to connect it to the internet. That's huge. So that's coming in the next few months, hopefully.
I can see a topic that you can come and talk to us about.
There you go.
There we go.
Good
So
idea.
when this thing sort of matures, then we'd like you to come over and talk to us about that.
Yeah.
The next question is, what are the skills that a new developer needs to know to be able to write good SharePoint apps?
So now, because Microsoft is switching more into kind of open source standards, it's actually going to be easier. The skills, they need to have good web development skills. Angular helps, JavaScript, HTML, CSS. It's more around web. REST for backend development now. There's obviously, and before REST was huge. And lesser. So now there's lesser requirement for things like, how does the backend work, and more kind of like using these open standards. So I think these are the key things: the web skills. That people know these days and are accessible.
And this is really something that's changing in all sort of web technologies, even on the Microsoft side and every other area. Now, the next question is, the last talk you gave us probably happened about 2 to 3 years ago.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, okay. And you were, the topic, if I remember correctly, was how to build apps for the SharePoint store.
Oh, right.
Something along those lines.
Yeah, I remember that. You have
I
good
wonder
memory.
what became of the SharePoint store. Did it actually take off?
I can't believe you're asking me these questions without. Well, it didn't die.
Yeah.
It didn't take off to the extent that that I was hoping it would. And I think the reason why is because to build certain type of apps, you have to have like full permissions to your SharePoint site, which was incredibly frustrating because I see Microsoft's point to the fact that they're trying to protect, your site from potentially harmful code, but at the same time, there's so many functionalities out there that would benefit from that. But I think the new framework in particular will kind of lower that barrier. But I have to agree with you that still a lot of development, a lot of commercial development is still happening as individual consulting rather than, let's purchase an app and add it to the App Store. Even though, I still receive royalties from some of the apps that I built.
Oh, that's good.
But not as much, but because I don't update them anymore. But it hasn't become a new Android or iOS. But it hasn't died.
And the other thing is, what's the SharePoint job market like in Vancouver nowadays?
Good question. In Vancouver is going pretty strong, especially this time of the year. Has been market has picked up significantly. There's also a lot of Office 365 opportunities overseas in the United States. So the level of skills that are required for both are similar, but a little bit different. Here is more kind of on-premises type of skills that are needed, and SharePoint 2016, and overseas is more kind of like SharePoint Online, a lot of demand like that. It hasn't been, I have to admit, it's not crazy as it used to be, 5 years ago or so, but it's still quite strong. The demand is still quite strong, for sure. And that kind of, goes back to the fact that Microsoft made kind of a choice to make SharePoint Online as a product rather than a platform, even though they probably will say, no, it's still a platform. And it's still a platform, but kind of shifted that focus, and a lot of developers are kind of, especially new developers, have lesser interest
in the online.
So, yeah. Well, nevertheless, the demand is still there.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Yaroslav.
My pleasure. Thanks,
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care. Cheers.